stage. Turn this thing up.
Bring it in. Read option back. Scotty, Jeff holding down the fort. Vido is still just a touch busy out doing his stuff. And we're going to tease this now because I have a feeling it's going to be an all-time read option moment on Friday when we get him back. Vido was hanging out with not one, not two, but three of the Philadelphia Eagles rookies out in Philly on Saturday night when Scotty and I were hammered. Actually, no, me, I was hammered. After our event at the Wells Fargo Championship, and we will get into that at the end of the pod. But Vido went out with Grant Calcaterra, Juergens, the center, Cam Juergens, the center from Nebraska, and then Carson Strong, the quarterback who the Eagles signed as an undrafted free agent out of Nevada, took him out into Philly. And all those boys better have been paying, right? Because I'm pretty sure all their rookie contracts are signed. So that signing bonus hit. I hope they treated our boy Vido well, but that's going to be an all-time story. We're going to do social clips and everything for that because Vido got after it apparently, and I'm excited to hear what the Eagles rookies thought about Philly. And curious, who do you think was the first recognized of that group? It has to be Juergens, right? Second round guy. The videos of him have gone like viral.
Yeah, I would think that. No offense, Grant, but probably Carson second, just because he's quarterback. I would guess, but who knows?
Grant's the biggest out of them.
Grant's the biggest for sure.
Right. So he'd be the one you'd be like, is he a pro athlete? Is he an Eagle? Yeah. Those kinds of chatter would start to go.
Well, I love the idea of the juxtaposition of those three guys out with Vido.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Vido's not a huge guy. So
that's the thing. Cause people who, even if you watch on Zoom, you really have no idea other than Vido's seat where we record the pod is further away from the screen than me and Scotty. So he looks small on the camera already. But Vido's like 5'6", 5'7". Yeah, I hope I'm not insulting him. Maybe he's like 5'8", but like Vido's not a very big dude. So yeah, when you're talking about Carson Strong, who's like 6'3", Grant's 6'5", and Cam Juergens is like 6'1", 6'2", and then Vido out there, he probably looked like their like club promoter or their agent or something. It'd be I'm excited for the story because all the details we just shared to you guys are all the details Scotty and I know about this. And we might, probably not likely, but if somehow we're able to fit this in the back end of the pod, we might have that happen. But likely that's coming on Friday's pod. So all-time story, and we'll get the full play-by-play on Friday's pod from Vido. Other than that, sticking about Philadelphia, the Sixers are back.
Yeah, how about that?
Sixers are freaking back, dude.
What a difference Joel Embiid makes.
Joel Embiid's got a broken face coming off a concussion, wearing the Phantom of the Process mask again. And just like that, the Sixers look like the better team significantly. Now, look, role players always play better at home, but Philly's on fire now. Not only did they get a great draft class, Bradbury, the cornerback from the Giants, who Eagles fans have been praying was going to get released, has officially been released today. So there's a good chance, apparently, Howie's been in his pocket basically this whole process here because the Eagles tried to make a trade for it. If we get a cornerback, the Eagles, Philadelphia's home opener is going to be the second Monday Night Football game, week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings, which is exciting too because they're going to be, I might be Joe Buck and Aikman, depending on which of those games go. But Monday night kickoff, the first 2 Monday night games of the year, I forget what the first one is, but the second one is Eagles-Vikings. First time Vikings have been back since the 2018, 2017 playoffs. So lots of good stuff for the city of Philadelphia.
Got this. The schedule gets released this week too, doesn't it?
Yes. And in fact, there's been some rumblings coming out, some leaks, anonymous leaks here and there. So I think we get the full breakdown. That'll be a part of Friday's pod.
The Niners on the international one. I might be in Mexico City in November.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that'd be nice. Mexico in November actually sounds lovely. But yeah, so Philly's on fire. The playoffs as a whole are looking great. Now, we're recording this on Monday night before Boston and Milwaukee and Golden State and Memphis play their game 4. I still don't understand how the schedule worked out that way. That both of these series started like 2 nights before the Dallas and Phoenix and the Philly Miami Heat, and yet there hasn't been more than a day off for any of these in those 2 series. And I think it makes it honestly a little bit better for the fans because right now, I mean, both of those series are 2 games apiece. And it feels like after what we saw out of Dallas and Phoenix yesterday, that the Mavs could damn near steal that series away. Luka Doncic playing on another level. So as a whole, the playoffs in the NBA at least are on fire. Like I feel like there's a chance that the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference semis, all 4 series go 7 games.
Yeah, and quite a turnaround from Friday's podcast when we talked about how there were 2 really good series and two really
bad
boring ones. And now the 2 really bad ones are equally, I think, as good as the other 2 with the Warriors and the Grizzlies and Boston and Milwaukee as well. So
what a difference a weekend makes, man.
Yeah. Well, sure does. A couple of days off, a little R&R, some golf. And here
Seriously.
we are, boys.
whole bunch to get into. We're also going to hit a little bit on NBA awards are finally announced. Everything, the main 6 ones. Jokic is the MVP. I don't think that's any shocking or breaking news to anybody. Monty Williams also wins Coach of the Year. That came out today. Tyler Hero is the 6th man of the year. Defensive Player of the Year was Mark Smart. Most improved was Ja. And what's the other? Rookie of the Year was Scotty Barnes. So we have the full 6 already out. And you know what? We're just going to get this out of the way now because I've ranted, I think, probably 3 or 4 times on this pod. But the MVP thing, this is going to be the last thing I say about it. And we're never talking about it again. All right. It's a regular season award. Okay. Anything that Joel Embiid has done in this postseason, as incredible as it is, has no justification, is no feather in a cap, is no point that you can be making about the MVP. And in my money, if I have one dude from this season, I could have be the MVP, the guy who's on my team right now, it's Embiid or it's Giannis. And that's no slight to Jokic, who I think deservedly won the MVP. He was even better this year with a lesser team around him than he was the year before. I'm all for it. Congrats to Jokic. You earned it. But Sixers fans, all right, I'm begging you here. One dude got sent home in the first round. One dude's team sucks. And another dude is now 2-2 in the Eastern Conference semis, looking like the better team, physically dominating with a mask on, Bam Adebayo. I mean, who would you rather be? Do I want Embiid to feel slighted by this? Because I think he's the kind of guy that will use it as fuel to be better. Hell yeah.
I would.
Use it up. But we don't, can we just stop with it? Do we have to still every single day on Twitter, like between whatever random ass Barstool drama is going on today, which is just filling up my timeline. I can't even follow it. But between that and the MVP thing with Embiid and Jokic, there's been nothing else on my timeline other than those 2 things all day. So I'm imploring us. All right. We win. We've won the breakup, right? If it's a debate between Jokic or Giannis, we've got the better guy. We got the guy who's on his way to try to go win a championship with vintage James Harden coming out of nowhere last night and dropping 31 on your head, going 5 of 8 from 3. That is where we are at. All right. So let's focus on the now. Let's gas up Embiid and let's keep this thing fucking rolling. Okay. And at this point, I'm done talking about anything else with the MVP. Jokic was amazing in the regular season. He deserves every single award. All of the nerd, shit that people are talking about, the VORP and all these nerdy stats, they all apply to Embiid too. Embiid's number 2 in almost every single one of those categories. So you can use that for just as strong an argument to make Embiid up. VORP is valid. Like, nerds are nerds for a reason. They're smarter than us. They figured this shit out. And we know how good and important Embiid is on the court. All right. So it's done. It's over. We're playing. He's not. Let's focus on game 5 in Miami Tuesday night. All right.
Yeah. And I think even Jokic would tell you that he'd rather have the Larry O'Brien than the MVP in
100%.
the second year. Like, and any of those guys would. So,
I mean, and look at 2001, right? The last time the Sixers had an MVP was Allen Iverson, right? And that in the year they lost to the Lakers in the NBA Finals. If you asked AI, would you rather have the MVP or the Larry O'Brien? He would say the same thing. All right. So if Embiid doesn't get an MVP and they win a championship, then what are we talking about? What are we talking about? All right.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm not ready to count it as we're even going to get past this round. So let's just, again, focus on game 5, another couple of days for Embiid to rest, and we'll move on. That being said, let's get into the playoff action. Last night, the Sixers, big win. And they're starting 5. I saw somebody tweet this out, which was very funny. It was like the starting five for the Sixers. It was 2018 Harden, 2025 Tyrese Maxey, 2019 Joel Embiid, 2019 Tobias Harris, and 2013 Danny Green. And that is kind of how it felt.
That's a big five, not a big three.
Yeah, right? Like, but that's how they all were playing. I mean, Danny Green is the unsung hero for these last two games, both Friday night and on Sunday night.
Yeah, he figured out how to shoot.
And he's been huge. And he's done that his whole career. Even in the years he's played for the Sixers in the postseason, like Danny Green getting knocked out of that series against Atlanta and not playing in that whole series, I said at the time, was the biggest impact. It was the biggest loss that they had that no one ever talked about. Yeah, Simmons didn't dunk the ball, right? We can all find all these different things. But Danny Green was essential to that team. He played a massive role and still does play a massive role. And I know that he's not, prime Danny Green anymore, but the experience, he's won championships on multiple different teams. He's a guy you want on your team, right? Because he was on the bubble team for the Lakers too, right?
Yeah.
So he's got the Lakers chip, he's got the Raptors chip, and he's got the chips from the Spurs era. He's an important player for them. And again, he's their fifth option. All they need him to do is hit corner threes. Maxey's averaging 24 a game in the playoffs so far this season. And he's shooting 50, 40, 90 stats, right? And if Harden, which is my case with Harden this whole time, is like, we don't need Harden to be what he was last night. We need him to be probably at least once a series, right? But he doesn't need to be that every single night in order for them to win these games. And Embiid is just, he's doing everything defensively, what he's able to do. And think about this too, like the mask thing, when you're not Rip Hamilton and you're not playing with it all the time, it screws up your peripheral vision. Like you can't see certain things. And the defense on ball against Jimmy Butler. Now, Embiid was also guessing a lot. Like he had to kind of guess to stay ahead of the ball. And J-Buck got him on a couple of pump fakes there. He got burnt a few times. But if Jimmy Butler's going to put in 40 like he did in that game, and you have Embiid taking Bam Adebayo basically out of the game, which is what it was, who scares you on this team? 38-year-old Kyle Lowry, who can't, I think he went 0 for 6 from the line. He's clearly banged up still. I don't know why Duncan Robinson isn't playing. I think they're worried about having him and Tyler Hero on the floor defensively, because that obviously is something the Sixers take advantage of. But, and I said this, I don't know if I said this on the pod. I think I did on Friday or on Friday's pod. But when you look at this team, like even before Embiid came back, I just felt more cemented that like if Embiid's playing in this series, the Sixers are the better team. And I feel like we've seen that over the last two games, but I don't know if that's just role players playing better at home or if there's actual truth in that.
I'd be interested to see the answer to that as they go back on the road here for game 5. But look, it was last night, the Heat shot less than 20% from 3. And that's huge against a team who, you can take Bam Adebayo out of the interior. That's fine. But where Miami can kill you is guys like Tyler Hero, guys like Strus, guys like Oladipo can get hot from 3, and that's the end of your night. Like, because then you got to go out and honor that. And hey, look, Bam Adebayo is playing tough in the middle. So that to me is huge. I think it's a good combination of both. I mean, you mentioned the defense that Embiid was playing. There was a clip I saw on Twitter that was just unbelievable. Like against Jimmy Butler, where he had him out on the perimeter and he tried to go one way, tried to go another way, and Embiid was just sliding with him the whole time on the perimeter. It was so I think it's largely that, having that presence back in Joel Embiid. But man, if the Heat can't shoot like they're accustomed to shooting, then that's going to be a problem.
Well, and they went 14 of 65 from 3 in the 2 games in Philly. 14 of 65 is atrocious, right? We're talking about, I think that's 22% ish.
Yeah.
Give or take. They went 7 of 30 in game 3. They went 7 of 35. But it's also, it's the guys that were taking the shots, right? Like Strus goes 2 of 5 from 3. That's going to happen. Jimmy Butler has never been a good 3-point shooter. 2 of 6 is what I expect him to. He might get hot a little bit. PJ Tucker, 1 of 4. Hero goes 1 of 5. You're not going to see him do that from home. But like Gabe Vincent goes 0 for 4. Like those role players always are going to be better at home during the playoffs than they are on the road. So I would expect like Gabe Vincent to go 2 of 4 as opposed to 0 of 4, right? I would expect Strus to probably bet that same mark. I would expect Lowry to hit a couple there. Hero, obviously, we would expect to play better in those situations. But I also think based off of what we've seen out of the Sixers teams, like Tobias Harris has been good on the road and at home. Danny Green's been good on the road and at home. Maxi's been good on the road and at home. Just the starting five, which Doc is typically more inclined to play his starting five. I have a lot more confidence that the Sixers are going to be able to do that on the road than Miami. But the thing is, and this is the cliche that everyone always says, right? Like it's the old line that your dad says, like, series doesn't start until road team wins a game. And so far we haven't seen a road team win a game yet. And as much as it is definitely a cliche, I do think there's truth in those. Like I think every cliche is born because they come from something that's happened many times over the years. I do think there's truth to that, right? And the Sixers, I think game 5 is weirdly kind of a must win because I don't know if I want to see Harden in Miami in a game 7. And conventional wisdom tells us like this series is starting to feel a lot like the Toronto series a couple of years ago, which is that when the Sixers are at home, they are, because remember that year too, and I guess it was the 2018, 2019 season, the Sixers had like the best home record of any team in like 20 years. Like they were an absurd, like the splits were absurd. Now they haven't quite been that way over the last couple of years, but I also feel better weirdly about this team than I did about the 2018, 2019 team, because I think Embiid's just at another level than we've ever seen him at. And I think he's going to continue to get better. And I think there's something like that. Do you know the meme of the dude who's in the hospital and it's like, he takes a picture, it's like a screenshot of a text, but he's sitting there with like the oxygen thing up and it's this like hick looking dude. And he just says, "I lived, bitch." And it's a screenshot of the text. It's one of my favorite memes, but like, that's kind of how I feel about Embiid. Where it's like, oh, we thought it was over. I was counting the Sixers out. I was counting the Sixers out in the freaking Toronto series at one point.
Yeah.
And it still just seems like every time Embiid is at this another level that I just have faith that there's nothing Miami can do to stop Embiid. And as long as Embiid's doing that, it's going to make things easier for Harden because who's guarding Harden at this point? There's no great on-ball defender other than Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler was covering Maxey for most of the game because they needed that. So I feel confident that in game 5, we're going to see at least Maxey or Harden have another big night. And I mean, Maxey dropped 34 in that game without Embiid in game 2 in Miami. If he was able to do that without Embiid, and obviously he took a lot more shots, but Maxey had, I think, almost 20 points in game 4. He took 10 shots.
It's efficient.
Yeah. So yeah. I feel good. And JJ Redick said this on an ESPN hit, a SportsCenter hit earlier today as well. It's just like Tobias Harris is the 4th option on this team. And yet he's playing the best basketball that he's played as a Sixer. He's shooting the ball at almost 50% from 3 in these playoffs. He's getting to the rack. And as we saw in what was the most important play of that game last night, when Miami just kept kind of hanging around and Butler just kept making shots, that Tyrese Maxey alley-oop to Tobias Harris on the baseline from basically half court. Like, if you have a 21-year-old point guard doing that to your 4th option, who's a borderline all-star player, at his prime, and Tobias Harris, that's a problem. And they're able to throw Thibault out there even for a couple minutes. Thibault's played better in these last couple games. So I'm just, again, maybe this is optimistic. I don't know, but I'm feeling very good about the Sixers in game 5, but I do think it's a game. I think it's a must win.
Yeah, I would agree with you because, if you're forced to have to go back down in a series and then play in front of your home crowd again, just to get back to even, like, this is where you need to steal one. Like, it's, I would say either game 1 to set the tone or game 5 on the road are probably the most important games of a series if you don't have home court.
And it's a 3-game series now.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to that dumb cliche that every dad says at a barbecue around this time of year, but it's the truth. And I'll say this too. I didn't think there was any shot in hell the Sixers were going to win game 6 in Toronto. I thought there was no shot, and on draft night, first round, and they won by 35, right? That is something that this iteration this era, the process era of Sixers playoff runs over the last 4 or 5 years, they've never been able to do that. They've never been able to go on the road. Even last year, they blew game 6 against Atlanta, right? Like this is the kind of stuff that they did. They blew those games when they needed to win them on the road. And we saw that game against Toronto, and they just absolutely wiped the floor of them. And I wouldn't expect that to happen against the Heat, but I mean, Kyle Lowry looked bad. Like he looked really, really bad. I don't even know if they can play him that much. And then you're really talking about, all right, well, now the pressure is on guys like Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, who were undrafted, first or second year players. And this is a big moment. And by the way, you also have Jimmy Butler staring you daggers every time you miss a 3. And if you're going to, I'll let Jimmy Butler get his 40, but Bam is not scoring more than 20 points against Embiid in the post, unless Embiid gets hurt or gets into foul trouble, knock on wood. Yeah. But at this point, like I think that's really the only hope that the Heat have is you have to get Embiid in foul trouble and you have to try to wear him out. But he's gotten so good defensively defending the rim. And the other thing is if you had to make a bet, who's going to get into more foul trouble, Embiid guarding Bam or Bam guarding Embiid?
Yeah, it's Bam.
Bam had 4 fouls in the first 2 minutes of the third quarter.
Yeah.
So if that's what we're talking about here, I feel exceedingly more comfortable with the Sixers there. But at the same time, it's Doc, it's James Harden, it's guys who have a history. And though it's not Embiid's fault ever, and Embiid hasn't been out of the second round. So this is arguably the most important game of Joel Embiid's career.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge.
And you can say the game 7 against Toronto, you can say game 7 against Toronto or against Atlanta last year, but this feels like the most important game.
Well, because now every win, especially if you get the road win in game 5, every game is going to become the most important game of his career. Because now you're playing for a shot to get out of the second round and go to the conference finals. So, hey man.
And if they beat Miami in game 5, there's no way in hell they lose game 6, right?
Yeah.
Again, knock on wood, because that's the kind of shit I would say. And then of course I'm going to be wrong because I feel like I'm always wrong when I'm picking the playoffs here for the Sixers, which part of me wanted to come out and do a whole bit about how the Sixers are actually not that good. They're actually going to probably lose game 5 just to reverse jinx it. Because I feel like every time I talk about the Sixers in the playoffs for the last 4 years, I've been wrong.
Yeah, well, you did say that they were done on Friday's pod, and here we are. So they're done, Jeff. They're toast.
They're done.
Stick a fork in them.
Ugh, they're like a sizzler steak, overcooked and
done.
dry. All right, that's enough Philly talk. Let's move on to the other game that we saw Sunday night, and the other 2 games I guess we saw since we last talked. Phoenix and Dallas, and wow, has this series also made a giant change. This is fun because this is a level of Luka that I think anyone who's closely followed the NBA has been waiting to see Luka in a spot like this.
Yeah,
he's so good at pretty much everything. And what's amazing to me is like, and game 3 in that series on Friday night is a great example of this, right? Like Luka's stat line, 26, 9 assists, 13 rebounds. That's not Luka dropping 45 like he did in games 1 and 2. That's Luka getting 2 games into a series, kind of like what we saw Milwaukee do last year and Giannis do last year, where it felt like, the Bucks lost game 1 of every single series during their playoff runs. And then they went down 2-0 against Phoenix in the NBA Finals. And it was kind of this like, I'm figuring it out. And it's like, tonight, I have no choice. I have to drop 40 or else we have no shot. And they ultimately lose game 1, game 2. And then they come in at game 3 and he's like, all right, I'm still going to score. I'm still going to get mine, but I'm getting everybody else involved here. And Jalen Brunson, who is turning in, I mean, I love Jalen Brunson. Obviously he's a Villanova dude, but 28 from Jalen Brunson. And he only going, this is the other thing too, only going 1 of 5 from 3. So it's not like he was pouring it in. He can get by guys. He's surprisingly a really good finisher for his size, because he's only like barely 6 foot if we're being generous to him. And then the other thing with Luka is Phoenix was giving him so much attention that he's just constantly giving it out to other people, right? So like Dwight Powell is technically the starting center, but for all intents and purposes, Kleba plays the most minutes, right? He had 33 in game 3. Dwight Powell had 10. So if you look at the starters, they all were in double digits, right? Kleba off the bench in those 33 minutes had 14 points. Brunson has his 28. Reggie Bullock had 15. Finney Smith has 14, right? And yet Luka was still able to get his and get to the foul line. This is a dangerous version of Dallas, where it's like once Luka feels like he can maneuver the game, then they're in a good spot. And what they've done defensively is basically say the only way we lose is if DeAndre Ayton is beating us. And in games 3 and 4, Ayton has been terrible.
Yeah. Well, like you said, they're forcing him to, and it's not just because, he's got the ball in his hand all the time, Ayton. It's like game 4, for example, Chris Paul getting in foul trouble and missing most of the fourth quarter, where he's led that team to be dominant in closing out games. That's huge. That's huge, because now you have to, he's one of the best facilitators in the NBA. No question about it. And so if a game's running through him and they've been that good closing out games in the fourth quarter, I to not have him on the floor is a massive blow. So, and then on the offense for Luka, it's him doing everything right, but it's the offense is running through him, but he's also running great off ball, and he's setting screens and he's distributing the ball, and then he's also scoring on top of that and getting to the hole. So, and that's huge too, man. Like this is the version we talk about Jokic winning the MVP. This is the kind of play that we expected from Luka to put him at an MVP level if he played like that for an entire season. Granted, there's a small sample size, but still, always what we've thought he could do.
Well, and Luka allows you to do, because Luka's not a good defensive player, right? And that's not what I'm trying to say here. But there is something to having a guy his size. He had 13 rebounds in game 3, right? Like, he can rebound the ball. He can force his way under the basket. He's not a rim protector, God no, and he can't guard anyone out on the perimeter, but he is a bigger body. And what I really kind of love what the Suns have done is defensively, they've tried to take Mikal Bridges out of the game as much as possible, right? So Bridges, he's arguably their third best scoring option, maybe even number 2, depending on which version of Chris Paul we're getting. Like, Chris Paul is always going to be a better scorer than Mikal Bridges, but Mikal Bridges can do a little bit off the dribble. He's obviously a great 3-point shooter, and a lot of what he and Crowder do in their offensive system, it can get a little redundant, right? Like, a great option for the Suns is to either have Jay Crowder or Mikal Bridges in a corner for a 3. And they rotate and stuff to try to get some of that action, try to get one of those two guys an open look. And they're doubling down. Finney Smith is like doubling down, making sure Mikal Bridges is not going to be the guy who gets the open look, because he is just a more dangerous, better scorer than Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder had 13 shots in game 4, right? He scores 15, but again, 6 of 13, that's like a good stat line for Jay Crowder, but they needed all 13 of those, and Devin Booker is just getting hounded. Yeah, Devin Booker had 35 last night, but as you said, Chris Paul gets into foul trouble early. He played 23 minutes in this game.
Yeah.
And you can't even blame Scott Foster, because he was the asshole doing game 4 in Philly.
Yeah.
And by the way, there was an amazing stat I'd seen, combined Harden and Chris Paul when Scott Foster refs one of their playoff games. They were like 1 in 27 combined. And the one win was Harden when they beat the Clippers.
Oh my God.
So literally the one win that Harden was there until last night. And then the Sixers end up pulling that game out and James Harden goes off. But this is an interesting series. Going back game 5, 2 apiece, I trust Chris Paul to figure it out. We saw New Orleans and stuff hang around, and they send out I already forget his name, but the dude who was on New Orleans who was bugging Chris Paul.
Alvarado.
Thank you. They were sending him around. You had Herb Jones locking down guys, right? And then ultimately, like, what did Chris Paul do in that game 6? Oh yeah, he goes 14 of 14 and has like a legendary game and does what Chris Paul does. And I would expect to see that out of Chris Paul until we find out that, like game 5 is going to be a Scott Foster game. But if you're getting Cam Johnson in the game for 30 minutes, who
Yeah,
I like Cam Johnson, great role player. That's a problem for Phoenix.
it is. And look, the rotation for Phoenix was absolutely insane. Like they had tons of guys who were in the line. They only had two did not plays, and one of them was hurt. So they used everybody for at least some time, and then I think they had to with Chris Paul being out. And then the other thing that blows my mind is Devin Booker playing 43 minutes, 35 points, 12 of 13 from the line, shot just under 50% from the field, minus 12. Like what?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Plus minus isn't always a great indicator, right? But in certain contexts, I think it can be. And I think this is kind of one of those where it was like, and I'll also say this too. Look, Chris Paul plays 23, Booker plays 43. I don't know how many of those minutes were without the other, but at least at minimum, Devin Booker played 20 minutes, best case scenario, played 20 minutes without Chris Paul on the floor. And that's assuming that for all 23 of Chris Paul's minutes, the Devin Booker was also on the floor. And when Devin Booker's out there without Chris Paul, Devin Booker has to go to that version of himself that he was pre-Chris Paul being on Phoenix, which was a hybrid 1-2 guard where he had to kind of run some of the offense, but he was still trying to do the stuff that makes Devin Booker as good as he is.
Yeah.
And that, again, is a problem for Phoenix. You don't want Devin Booker trying to create the offense as much as you want him to be a scoring option off of a guy like Chris Paul or Cam Payne, but Cam Payne's not a true number one. They don't have anyone else who can really distribute it other than Booker. So yeah, Chris Paul gets into trouble. Well, now Devin Booker becomes the one, and Mikal Bridges has to kind of slide over and be what Devin Booker was, which is not a great position for either one of those guys. And I'll say this too. They keep throwing Mikal Bridges on Luka, and Luka's getting where he wants. Luka's got, because the height wise, they're both about 6'8", and Luka's got 50 plus pounds at least on Mikal Bridges.
Easy.
So anything in the post already, Bridges is at a disadvantage. And then Luka's just so good. This old man style basketball where he just controls the pace. He gets to his spots. He always seems to make the right pass. And then he's been a knockdown 3-point shooter in this series. I'm still going to take Phoenix. But if Luka has figured out what Phoenix is doing to him defensively, which it seems like he has based off these last two games, Phoenix has to make adjustments. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's trying to double team Luka, but even if you do that, he's going to crush you with passes out of the double team. I guess the hope is that you can't let those side guys kill you. You have to force Luka to play hero ball. But if Jalen Brunson's going to put up 28 and then 18 and stuff like that. Finney Smith goes 8 of 12 from 3. I don't think those numbers are necessarily good indications of what the rest of the series will look like for Dallas. But when they play that smaller lineup with Kleba at the 5 and just say, hey, DeAndre Ayton, you're your team's only hope unless Chris Paul, stays out of foul trouble and kind of takes it over. I think this series could go 7. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. No, Luka's playing like the guy at the pickup court, right? With the amount of fundamentals that you have, it's the guy that you don't want to play when you go play pickup basketball, because it's just he's just going to be a scoring machine. You're going to put 2 guys on him, he's going to do his thing anyway. So, but yeah, if he's get to his spot, and I think a lot of what Phoenix has to do in terms of adjusting is go back to the drawing board, because this is sort of what Giannis did to them in the finals last year when he started to take over games, and it looks similar in terms of way of playing now. Luka's not as physical in getting to the basket like Giannis did, because he would just dominate at every position of the floor, and defensively too. But offensively, or defensively rather, for the Suns, you have to sort of, I think, figure out a way to combat that like you had to do in the finals last year. And I think with the experience, I think you're right. Ultimately, they are the ones that win the series, but that's sort of the mentality I think you have to have.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, this can be a career altering, when you think of trajectory, this could be a series, to say the other side of it, that we say this was the official Luka Doncic, not just having unbelievable games in the first round of the playoffs, kind of like young MJ against the Celtics at the 63. Like, again, not to say that, what we've seen Luka do or that he's going to be Michael Jordan or anything like that. I just mean this could be a career altering playoff series for Luka if they found a way to come back from the 2-0 and win, because before this year, we say, oh, Embiid's never been out of the second round, but until this year, Luka had never been out of the first round. And now he's got a chance to be in the Western Conference Finals. And I'll say this too. I think Dallas could beat Golden State. I think Dallas can beat Memphis. I wouldn't bet on it. I would take Golden State over Dallas as we stand right now, but they absolutely could.
That'd be an interesting series. I didn't want to play them. I was hoping to avoid them in the first round.
Well, we're going to take a break, and then we'll talk about Golden State and Memphis and Boston and Milwaukee. But answer this now. Which of the two teams in this series, assuming Golden State moves on, which is still an assumption, and we'll get into why, but assuming that they do, which team would you rather play?
I'd rather play Dallas.
No.
Just because I know we have the depth and the longevity to play with them, because we're both going to end up playing small ball. Which is fine. And then at that point, I'm taking my 3 shooters over their 1. So, yeah.
And honestly, I think you could put Draymond on Luka. The flops of Luka versus the technical fouls of Draymond would be a hell of a matchup.
And just pester him.
Yeah. All right. Quick break. We'll come back. We'll hit on the other 2 series here. Get into a little golf talk and Kentucky Derby stuff, and we'll move on here on the pod. All right. So as I said before, we are still a couple hours away from Game 4 of the Grizzlies and Warriors series and the Celtics and Bucks. 2 series that feel a lot differently. Actually, I'll say this. The Bucks-Celtics series feels about the same as we did when we were talking about it on Friday. But the Memphis and Golden State one does not, and that is because of Ja Morant. Ja Morant likely not playing in Game 4. Of course, again, as we do during Monday nights on the football season, we sound often pretty dumb. So maybe he does end up playing. He did a little shoot around, but he was not there for the full shoot around this morning, which is definitely worrisome. I don't know how you feel about it, Scott. I can guess based off of, your fandom, and I know you. I didn't think the whole grab, the Jordan Poole grabbing Ja Morant's leg, I didn't think that was that bad. And it seemed like, Ja Morant, tweeted something out about like you broke the code or something like that. He'd since, deleted the tweet, but I didn't think what he did was that bad. I really didn't. It seemed like there was a whole lot to do about nothing. And then apparently there was a play in that game, just a couple of possessions earlier, where he dove out after a ball and he and Klay Thompson collided. And it was
a closeout where he landed awkwardly. Yeah.
I was like, hey, you probably hurt your knee on that play. And then maybe it got exaggerated a little bit more when Jordan Poole did it. But for as dirty, and we talked about how dirty we thought the Dylan Brooks thing was in Game 2, and how I didn't really think that was much of a dirty play. Well, if that wasn't a dirty play, then the Jordan Poole thing certainly was not.
Super benign. Play. Yeah, 100%. And look, even if that was the play where Ja got hurt, I still don't think that it was a ton of anything at all. Like, it's Jordan Poole going after the ball. We're in a double team here with Steph on the other side. Like, Jordan Poole is trying to get after the ball in a contested spot in the half court. Like, to me, that was just an aggressive basketball play. It was probably could have been called a foul, but I don't think it was a dirty play by any means. Like, he was not trying to grab his right leg and rip it out from underneath him. Like,
if anything,
the intent wasn't there at all, like not even close.
If anything, like, and again, it was a mistake in that he probably shouldn't have grabbed the knee, right? But you see this, like, there's so much legal hand checking, not in like the forearm ways you would see in the 90s. But there's so much grabbing that goes around with guys' hips. If you really look at like broken down plays and how guys box out and do some of the nitty gritty stuff and defending, they will try to get you on your, kind of like cornerbacks do the same thing with wide receivers, right? They always put the back of your hand on the outside of the wide receiver's hip. And it's just a way to kind of keep your body a little bit closer without grabbing. it seemed like he was kind of reaching around, and then he went for the hip, but the hip wasn't there, and then he just kind of grabbed the knee like, instinctually. But there was no like tug. There was nothing vicious. And again, the intent is a big part of it. If he had grabbed the knee and like ripped it out, like, so if he was like, oh, he's going for the ball, but did it with the knee, that'd be different. I really don't think that that's what happened. And yeah, I think as you said, the closeout there on Klay Thompson when he landed weird on his knee probably had more to do with it. And also, Ja Morant is just a vicious player, and how he attacks the rim, how
He's
he
so
attacks
twitchy too. Yeah.
Like there's a million, and not only that, the amount of hard falls he's taken over the course of this playoffs, like it's probably a bunch of little things, and the landing might have just been the thing that kind of broke, the straw that broke the camel's back. Because even the closeout one wasn't super awkward. Like it didn't even look super awkward. Like I've seen guys have worse landings who've been fine. So it's probably a little bit of wear and tear. And I think that's kind of a lot of people's concern about Ja as a whole. The question for them is, you just got blown out by 30 against Golden State Warriors, where, basically just like we talked about on Friday's pod about, well, we're saying this all now, and then Klay Thompson's going to have a sick game, where he goes, 4 of 6 from 3. Steph only 2 of 8 from 3. Otto Porter Jr. gets some buckets. Jordan Poole goes 3 of 5.
Yeah.
And then Wiggins is, I think, the unsung hero of this game too, where Wiggins was just flying around the court defensively. And I remember the year he and Embiid were coming out, like I wanted Wiggins because I thought that the defensive potential from Wiggins and what we saw when he was at Kansas was off the charts. And then the offensive hope was like, oh yeah, but he will develop the offensive game enough. And that obviously hasn't happened. But if you're getting 17 from Wiggins when he's playing really, really good defense and is just hand in the face of anyone who needs a hand in their face, this team becomes a lot more dangerous. Similar to what we're saying with like Danny Green. Like if Kuminga and Wiggins are giving you high quality minutes, that's a good place to be in if you're a Warriors fan.
Yeah, 100%. Right. And so for a correction by me, it was Wiggins on that play involved with Jordan Poole and Ja Morant, not Steph Curry. But yeah, to the point about the defense, like he's been huge defensively in both series, particularly with the help defense against Jokic in Denver, against Denver rather. So he's fine. And look, if he's your third and sometimes fourth best option on offense, the way Jordan Poole's been playing, like I'll take that all day long with the minutes that he's getting. I mean, he was probably up over close to 40, I would guess. Quick check here. Oh no, he was at 26. Oh yeah, we had like a ton of rotation. And well, that part of that was the blowout, but still, like I'd venture for the playoffs, he's averaging up around 35 to 37 minutes a game. So
well, when they want to go real small too, sometimes they'll bump him down to the 4, and then they'll bring in obviously the 3 with Klay and Jordan Poole and Steph. Yeah. Then sometimes they'll keep him off, and they'll have a Looney and Draymond in, or Looney or Draymond in, and then it's Poole and and then with Kuminga. So he's been averaging about 30 minutes a game throughout this. Yeah, I don't know. It's a shame. Obviously, like I think we all want Ja Morant to play in this game.
He's most improved.
He shouldn't have even been in.
What is that?
In that conversation,
like, he's already good. Like anyway, I want to do it. You're 100% right. I want to do this. I want it to be a slugfest with one of the best players in the NBA on the court. I don't want it to be an excuse. I don't want the rest of the series to be like, oh well, you won 4-2 because it was because of a dirty play on Ja Morant. Like,
even so, Ja played 30. Ja led the team in minutes.
Yeah,
right.
Like he's going to do that because he has to be on the floor, especially with Dillon Brooks out. Like he has to be on the floor. I'm surprised he didn't have more.
Well, and that's the thing. Like without Dillon Brooks, that was ultimately the biggest. I think the Dillon Brooks thing had more to do with this result in the 30-point win on Saturday than anything else. And
I still think it's a win just because of the way our offense played. But it wasn't a 30-point win.
But going back to the thing we talked about with role players, right? Role players playing better at home than on the road. All of Memphis's team are role players, right? Like other than Ja, I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr., yeah, he has the potential to be a really good, like, borderline all-star player. I like Jaren Jackson. If he can ever learn to not foul out of games, he would be that much more valuable. I mean, granted, he only had 3 fouls in this game, but I think that's like the first time all year. But it's, Xavier Tillman and Desmond Bane and Zaire Williams and Brandon Clark and Kyle Anderson and Steven Adams and DeAndre Melton. Like, they're all role players. And now it's one thing, too, when you're playing Minnesota, and albeit a great atmosphere that we saw in that stadium, in that arena during the first round, but that team is so young. That team was even younger than the Grizzlies were, right? And so it's their first taste of the playoffs. The Grizzlies at least had a little bit more of a taste in the playoffs. I look at Golden State compared to Minnesota, and you're like, this is a team that has won massive games. This is a team that went down from a 3-1 deficit to Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and still came back and won. This is a team that has won 3 championships over the last 5 seasons, right? Or 6 seasons, however long it's been. You're talking about a bona fide team of veterans with as much playoff experience as any team has in the league. They're not folding in these games. So,
and it's the core too. It's literally like Draymond, Steph, and Clay. And then what they're doing for these younger guys, even as far as Kevon Looney, but what they're doing to Otto Porter. This is like one of his first super long stints in the playoffs at this point, right? Even not that he's young, but Damian Lee, who's young, Jordan Poole, who's in his 3rd year, Kuminga, Moses Moody, who had some minutes the other night. Like it's huge for all of these guys.
And it makes sense as to why those guys played better at home than they did in games 1 and 2. Now, granted, Golden State did steal. Was it game 2 or game one? Game 1 they stole, right? So they stole one on the road already from Memphis, which is huge for that home court battle. But all of those guys played better at home in game 3 than they had in either of the first 2 games, where it felt like Clay and Steph and Draymond willed them to that game in game 1. These guys at home are free. Like Kuminga had 18 points. A rookie had 18 points. Or is he technically now? I guess his 2nd year. I guess.
Well, he was in the G League, yeah. But
he was. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, but again, totally different. Like, yes, it's the G League, whatever.
This is his first year in the NBA. Yeah.
First year playing in the NBA. He was drafted this year, so yeah, technically he's a rookie. But Kuminga having 18 points is insane. And that when you're getting that scoring from Wiggins, Kuminga, Clay has 21, Otto Porter Jr., and then obviously Jordan Poole has 27. Not that Draymond was going to be shooting much anyway in this series, but you just free him up. No, you just free him up to do what Draymond does best, which is great defense and help orchestrate the rhythm of the offense, because he knows exactly where everyone needs to be. And they've because of Steph and Clay, you can't play Steven Adams out on the court, so now you're forcing them to play, Xavier Tillman, who's a younger dude who's not used to playing that. You're playing Kyle Anderson and Brandon Clark, small ball 5.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't see a world where Memphis, especially without Ja Morant, has any, chance in this series.
No, not without Ja. I honestly, like that to me is a bigger blow than the Sixers losing Embiid. For 2 games.
100%. Because at least you have other guys around you, right? At least you have other guys in Philly, whether it's Harden, guys who can at least handle the ball. And they got smoked in their first 2 games against Miami on the road, because you're asking, young guys like Maxey, and you're asking guys like Tobias Harris and guys like that to step up and play big on those games on the road. Memphis already losing the home court advantage, getting blown out by 30. And now the guy who is the heart and soul of your entire team is out of this game. It doesn't set up well for them moving forward. So I think Golden State will more than likely close this series out.
I hope so.
Probably in 5. I don't know. I mean, I guess it also depends on Ja, because Ja was a maybe to play tonight. So maybe Ja will be back in time for game 5. But even still, at that point, you're staring down a 3-1 deficit to one of the best runs, one of the best organizations that we've had in sports over the last decade. So,
yeah. And the other guy I wanted to shout out to is Otto Porter Jr. Like, if we can get him playing 20 minutes to split time with Draymond, so he's not out there getting banged up, so he's not out there getting in foul trouble, and then to drop 13 points and a plus 30 on, like, he was 5s across the board in the stack categories. Like, that's huge. Like, that's some of the most impactful 20, 25 minutes that I've almost ever seen in the playoffs, save for like no, anyway, yeah.
Did you see the thing, by the way, about Otto Porter Jr. that
about how he's potentially
Will Chamberlain's
great?
Yes. I don't
Yes.
Otto
I'm here
Porter
for it.
Jr. Yeah, and it's so funny. I went to Twitter to pull it up here. The picture is crazy, especially when they wore the throwback uniforms that
Yeah.
Wilt had with the blue and the yellow and red, and it says FILA for Phila, because this is back when the Warriors played in Philly. And it's the same ones, but it says Warriors across the top. I don't know, man. I don't know if this is confirmed, but Wilt Chamberlain's known for having had sex with like 20,000 women. At least that's what he claimed.
That's a
lot. But you look at the pictures.
He scored 100 points in a game. I mean, geez.
I don't know, man. Might need to do some genetic testing there, though. Not that we have Wilt anymore these days. Yeah, absolutely crazy. The last series, Boston and Milwaukee. What a great series. I think this series is living up to the expectations. And I'll tell you what, I think these are the two best teams arguably in the league. And this has been Milwaukee without Chris Middleton. For Milwaukee to be up 2-1 and now playing this game at home in Milwaukee with a chance to go up 3-1, and they haven't had Chris Middleton this whole time, it says a lot about Giannis, dude. It says a lot. Yeah. And again, going to that role player thing, Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen, all these side pieces and all these side players that Milwaukee has, like, this makes them that much more dangerous. This makes them, I think, that much scarier for Boston. And I don't know. I mean, this game, what's crazy is like this series could be 3-0 Boston just as easily as it could be, 3-0 Milwaukee. And that's like the tall tale sign of a really, really good series. But it does scare me a little bit to think about what Milwaukee would be with Middleton right now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But, even with him out, even Giannis was in foul trouble at one point. So was Brook Lopez. So if any one of those guys gets into foul trouble late in the game, or there's an injury like we saw last year in the finals, like particularly one to Giannis, that's going to spell big trouble because these games are far too close and these teams are far too good defensively to let if a star on Milwaukee or one of their super important role players is no longer a factor. That's it, dude. That's it. That's how close this series is.
Yeah. And Giannis, I mean, 42, 8 assists, 12 rebounds, monster game for him on Saturday. But as you said, too, had 4 personal fouls, right? And the defense that they played as a team on Jason Tatum, I mean, Jason Tatum had 10 points in this game. Like they basically are saying, like, Al Horford, you need to score 25 plus if you want to have a chance here, because Al Horford had 22 and was a monster on the glass. And still, if Al Horford jumps a half second earlier on that putback, or one of the first putbacks go at the foul line there, this game goes into overtime. I don't think Jason Tatum is going to have back-to-back bad games, and I think he's going to go up and have a fucking night tonight. I think I could see him dropping 35 easily. But the other scary thing with Boston right now is, like, they've been in all these games. They've lost 2 games, but Jaylen Brown in the game that they won in game 2 was sensational. And he was sensational in this game too, right? 27 from Jaylen Brown, 12 rebounds. He's playing fantastic defense. But for all of the talk we had going into this series, thinking like, oh, well, they have Horford they can throw at Giannis, and they have Robert Williams they can throw, and Grant Williams, and hell, even if you need to put Tatum or Jaylen Brown, I mean, Jaylen Brown's not big enough to guard Giannis, but you have 4 dudes who you could leave on for a couple possessions against Giannis, and it just doesn't matter. Giannis is just better. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's more athletic, and he's gotten so good at passing out of the double team. Like, I didn't even realize Grayson Allen actually didn't score a point in this game, but Pat Connaughton goes 3 of 8 from 3. Wesley Matthews hits a 3, Brook Lopez. And I kind of love what they did there. Is like, yeah, you might have 3 slightly undersized big guys with Grant Williams, who's like 6'10", and Al Horford's like 6'10". Jason Tatum's like 6'9". So you have some guys who can throw them, but they have 2 7-footers in their starting lineup between Brook Lopez and Giannis. And they're like, all right, well, we're just going to have more big guys out on the floor than you have. And Giannis is still going to be able to play that point Giannis, because I don't even think point forward is fair to describe him as. He's a point Giannis. He's his own thing. And they're doing this whole thing without, I mean, Bobby Portis playing 26 minutes. Like, they're just matching all of the Celtics size and guys that they can throw at Giannis with bigger size.
Yeah, and it's not just size; it's guys who can fly around the court too on the perimeter and play defense against a good 3-point shooting team in Boston. So if you can shut that down, you're in business. But like I said, the depth is an issue, and it's weird. Like, I'm looking at the box scores from each of the 2 games in the East that we missed, and it's like, well, the rotation is vastly different. I mean, there's 5 and 6 guys that are healthy scratches, and then you look in the 2 Western Conference games, and it's like the rotation's insane. There's all but 1 or 2 guys that aren't playing on each of these teams and getting minutes. So,
I mean, other than Miami feels like they have to kind of dig deep with some of their depth, but even still, yeah, it's usually like, I mean, they have multiple DNPs there. The other thing too is both of those games are a little bit more blowouts. So like some of the minutes in the Phoenix guys, the guys who played like a couple minutes at the end, but you're definitely right in that. I mean, especially without Middleton, like Milwaukee has to play Giannis 40 plus minutes a game. Drew Holiday pulling out vintage Drew Holiday games. And the job he's done against guys like Marcus Smart and even Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Drew Holiday is like, hey, you want to give Marcus Smart Defensive Player of the Year? You're going to say he's the best guard defensively in the NBA. He's like, I've held that title for a decade now, dude. And watch me go to work. And I just think the team defense too with Milwaukee, and this is what they did all last year. I mentioned it earlier in the pod. They lost game 1 in every single one of those series, and they just adjust. And whenever they were able to adjust, it just seemed like there was nothing that the other team can do. And I think Milwaukee, even without Chris Middleton, should be the favorites in this series. But I just don't believe that Jason Tatum is going to get held to 15 or less points in all these games. And I think what's smart defensively is what Milwaukee's doing is they are focusing on Tatum, and they're going to force Jaylen Brown to score 30 a game. They're going to force Al Horford to put up 20. They're going to make Derek White hit his shots. I mean, Derek White going 2 of 3 from 3 is probably the most surprising thing in this entire stat line. And Boston still damn near did it. But this is also without Chris Middleton, which I don't think that can be understated, just how important of a player Chris Middleton is. He's so unassuming. He's so quiet. He's in Milwaukee, all this shit. But we sat here a year ago talking about Chris Middleton dropping 40-point games in a series against Brooklyn in the second round, and that's the kind of stuff that they're missing. And yet it hasn't seemed to slow them down, because other than game 2, where the Celtics played basically a perfect game defensively, it's felt like Milwaukee's been the better team on the court when you're just watching, right? If you brought an alien or someone who's never watched basketball before and said, which of these 2 teams are better through the 3 games, I think most teams would say right now, without Chris Middleton, it's still Milwaukee.
Yeah. The Monstars are taking Giannis's talent in that scenario for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all would at this point. All right. Well, let's do predictions now. I have Boston winning tonight behind a Jason Tatum monster performance in a really tight game, tying it up. And then I have Golden State winning comfortably again here, probably by 20 plus, I'm going to say, against Memphis.
We're just going tonight?
Just for tonight, yeah.
Okay.
No, fuck it. Let's do both. We'll do tonight and Wednesday or Tuesday.
All right, send it. Milwaukee is winning. They're up 3-1. They're not losing home court.
Ooh.
And same with the greatest team on planet Earth, the Golden State Warriors, who will be up 3-1 heading back to Memphis. I think this goes 6, though.
You think Memphis pulls one out?
Yeah,
well, I could see that too. Like Ja comes back a little banged up and has just like an absurd performance.
Just a vintage game. Yeah.
That's interesting. I have for tonight, I have Boston and I have Golden State as well. And then for Tuesday night, Philly, Miami, and then Phoenix and Dallas.
All right. I'm gonna give you one here. I think Philly pulls one out on the road. Just because I think Miami's a little bit shell-shocked right now with the way that the team looks with Joel Embiid back for the Sixers. I do think, and Spo is one of the best in the league at making adjustments. But I think that there's some momentum to be had here if you're Philadelphia, and you really have to ride it if you think you have a chance in this series. And if you don't and you want to go on vacation, then by all means, like, play like how you would normally play. But I think you have to elevate a little bit here and realize the opportunity to steal this game. Like I said, this is one of the most important games in any series. Steal this game on the road, go back to Philadelphia, and win yourself a series.
I'm going to take Miami. Wink.
Yeah,
wink.
That's about
Wink.
right.
A lot of winks here. For those just listening on the pod, I'm winking. I'm winking at both eyes back and forth.
That's called blinking.
Well, I was alternating winks.
Oh.
I was alternating winks. Left wink, right wink. For simple, just like the pessimistic side of me, I'm taking Miami. But no, I agree. I think this is Philly's game to win. I think Game 6 in Toronto proved that this team is different. And that this is a different level of this Sixers run post-process that we've seen. And I think Embiid, and you said that there too, which is a great thing. They look shell-shocked, and they did. They look shell-shocked because even Jimmy Butler gave everything he had.
Yeah.
And yet granted, I was hungover, so I was like hurting and like I couldn't even muster up like a clap, like I was hurting on the couch. But
jeez, that's bad.
Yeah. And that was, that was at 10 o'clock and when the fourth quarter was going on in this game. But it felt like with Embiid on the court, and it just felt like every single major possession, I was just like, I think the Sixers got this.
And then on top of that, this is one of those games, like you see the frustration in Jimmy Butler. And we saw this in the regular season when they played the Warriors, and the Miami was kind of going through a bit of a slump. And that's when they got in that bench brawl among the team. And it kind of galvanized them a little bit, but it took a while for everyone to figure out, hey, this is our leader and we need to be following him, not the other way.
It looked like those young guys. Like, I'm not worried about Tyler Hero. I think Tyler Hero is going to have a big game.
Yeah.
But the Gabe Vincents, the Mark Strauss, those guys, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Duncan Robinson for the first time in this series. I mean, they just gave him $90 million this past offseason. Now he hasn't played once in this series.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see now. I'd be more afraid of seeing Duncan Robinson than those other two guys. But those guys, man, like you could see it in their face a little bit that they were shook, especially when those shots weren't going. And I think the fact that Kyle Lowry is just, I think he's just a non-factor in this. I mean, who's he guarding? Maxey? That's a problem. Harden?
Yeah, don't do it,
man. It's just gonna help Harden. So I'm taking Miami. But
wink, not
wink. Actually. And then Phoenix, Dallas, Game 5. Who do you got?
Give me Dallas. I think they're gonna get Chris Paul back in foul trouble. Like if they realize that's the recipe for success, and we're gonna like force DeAndre Ayton to be an absolute superstar monster, which I don't think he's there yet. And we're going to force Devin Booker into a -33. Like, let's get Chris Paul in foul trouble. Granted, that's not easy to do. He's one of the more disciplined defenders in the league, but hey, if that's the recipe and you're letting Luka get 20, 10, and 10, like I'm there for that. Go Dallas.
I'm taking
also,
Phoenix.
I don't want to play them next round.
I'm taking Phoenix, but with the caveat that if Scott Foster is officiating that game, then I will switch my pick to Dallas. But
important correction.
I think DeAndre Ayton has a big game. I do. I think he's got it, and I think Mikal Bridges is also due. And I think the biggest thing is the Finney Smiths, those guys, the Klebas, they didn't play well on the road against Phoenix when in Phoenix, I should say. So I like the Suns to get back on track and win Game 5. So all right, those are our picks, and we'll take another break. Come back, do a little Wells Fargo Championship recap, talk a little Max Homa with another big win, a little Kentucky Derby, and we'll get you guys on your way to the rest of your week. All right, so we talked about on Friday's pod, but Scotty, myself, my buddy Andrew, my brother-in-law Kenny, we went down to the Wells Fargo Championship, or I guess up technically. Kenny came down from Philly. Really, really fun weekend. Boys' night on Friday. Lots of beers and seltzers flowing. And then Saturday, we got up. We started getting after it a little bit. The rain, not going to lie to y'all, the weather was miserable. It was like 50 degrees and pretty much rainy mist the whole time, but that wasn't going to stop us. We were going to have a good time. Other than a dickhead Uber driver who canceled on us, we had a really we had a really, really fun time. We got there and we'll do highlights and stuff the whole time. We also ran into our long listener, Ryan Kakaiko. Shout out to him. Ran into some guys I went to like elementary school with who I hadn't seen probably since high school graduation, which was fun to catch up with some of them. It was a really, really fun event, just kind of top to bottom. I felt like the whole thing, being there, seeing all the grandstands set up, the energy was high from people there, despite the weather kind of being shitty. And it couldn't have started out on a better note because we got there and the driving range was right past, like right when you walked in, right? So we get through the gates, our Uber's there, we walk up, and who's teeing off? Who's practicing on the range before he's about to go tee off? One Rory McIlroy. So right off the bat, we get in there. The buzz is already like, I heard a couple of people like, yo, Rory's on the range. And I just like beelined it over to the railing. I was like, I got to go get up there. So Scotty and I, like, we ran up. Andrew and Kenny, they went and started getting some beers or whatever. And we just went right up and we're watching them tee off and watching him on the range. And it's just, when you see PGA guys, and this is the first time I'd ever gotten a chance to see them. It sucked because it was so overcast and rainy. You lost the ball the second it hit the face. Like, you couldn't trace the balls. I think between the four of us, like, you guys had seen one or two, but like, unless it was stuff around the green, you really couldn't track the ball in the air, which was kind of a bummer. But the swing, the power, the noise that their clubs make when hitting the ball is just spectacular. And what was cool is, so you and I are sitting there, we're watching Rory take some videos, and he heads off. And one of the caddies, I think it was one of the caddies, for one of the other players was standing right by. And so I kind of called him over when you and I were standing up against the fence. And I was like, oh, are those Rory's practice balls? Like his ones he was hitting? And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh, I've always wondered, like, do they use like the TP5Xs or the Pro V1s, like when they're warming up? And the guy handed me a ball, was letting me kind of look at it. And so I have it right here because he gave it to me. He let me keep it. And he said, you can see on the YouTube that black dot. He said, we don't know the difference between a TP5X and the ones that Rory uses. He's like, the only thing we know is that Rory gets the ones with the black dot. He's like, Rory hits the ones with the black dot. Everyone else hits regular TP5Xs, which I guess, look, when you're Rory McIlroy, you can do that. And so he handed me that, and I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, hey, can I keep this? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so I start like fangirling. I said this to you guys when we were there, but like, it was really cool to be at a sporting event for the first time when you felt like a kid again. You know, like I had that excitement of like going to spring training or something, and you're like right there and the players are right there, or catching a foul ball or watching batting practice, and that like youthful exuberance that you kind of have when you're just getting all hyped up for it. And so he could hear me kind of freaking out, and he said, oh, do you really want to freak out? And I said, sure. And he handed me a tee, which is a broken tee, and you're probably not gonna be able to read that, but it says Roars on it. And Rory has his own practice tees. It's cracked. He did hit it on the range. He let me take this too. So I left that day with a TaylorMade golf ball that Rory McIlroy was using around the green when he was warming up, and a broken tee that he hit with his stealth driver from TaylorMade. And I said to you then, and I stand by this, didn't matter what happened the rest of the day. I was happy. I was a happy camper, man, for the rest of the day.
Yeah, you were. I know that was cool, man. And you're right. Like the way that you can get access to some of these guys, particularly at a PGA event, is so much different than in any other sport, because
completely different.
I mean, like in any other time, you have to go to the park super early or the stadium, and you have to hope that the usher working there will let you down toward the court side, or
which gets incredibly more difficult to do the older you get. When you're a kid,
they'll
be like, him and his dad, you can go ahead down there.
Yeah, especially if you're standing there with a couple beers, you're like, hey, can I go down? Yeah, 100%. So yeah, it's unlike a PGA event is unlike any of that. And I'm glad you got to experience the first one. I haven't been in just about 12 years to an event. So I'm glad I got to go too. It was a fun time.
It was a good time. There were a lot of drinks flowing. I might have been wobbling a little bit standing next to the tee box. I think it was when Tony Finau was teeing off on number 8. It was not like a stumbling. It was just that, like, you know, when you've been drinking all day and it was cold and rainy, and like, I was underdressed too. So I was like really not feeling some of it. And I was just kind of up against the rope, and I'm like 10 feet from Tony Finau teeing off. And it was just kind of like that little bit. And I'm also like on a side slope, right?
Yeah.
Like just a little bit of a fade back. And Scotty was right there. He's like, hey, you're good, buddy. Just a little tap on the back. But nothing that a couple of waters and some hot dogs, weren't able to cure up. Yeah. And it was cool, man. We went right down there. I think number 9, the par 3 there at the back end of the front. We hung around there, the tee box down there, around the green. And it is crazy too. When you're standing around the green at a par 3, especially when you can't see the ball coming in, it just appears on the green. Like you all of a sudden you just hear the thump. And
you're hoping they don't go long and whack you in the face. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like I'm sitting there, like at one point I was like, oh shit. Like as soon as you see them swing, you just lose the ball in the air.
Yeah.
Because they're already with the fog and everything. Like you couldn't really see when exactly they were teeing off. And you're also, a couple hundred yards away. And like, you start to get a little worried, man. Like, oh shit, did I, I'm about to get hit, and then of course,
and in that weather, you wouldn't see it until the last second.
Exactly, you wouldn't know it until it hit.
And then so when we were greenside, it was fun because the guys coming up, who hit good shots, who didn't necessarily know, because one of the holes that we were greenside on was sloped uphill, so your shot was a little bit blind, and so it was like, if they had hit a good shot onto the green, them walking up or right by the ropes, I'd be like, you're going to love that, or you're going to hate that shot, depending on how it was. And then in the tee box, we just said to everybody who teed off, you're going to love that.
You're going to love
that shot.
There were definitely probably a parent or two there with their kid who were like, God, these drunk assholes, but we weren't obnoxious. Like we weren't get in the hole. Like we weren't doing any of that. It was just
I did at one point call Brian Harmon the real lefty. And everybody loved that one because it was I was making a slide at Phil Mickelson's expense. So
no, it was, and
people around the ninth green love that one.
you got a good I remember that you got a good little chuckle out of that one. The real lefty, Brian Harmon, one of my favorite players. I remember at one point we were walking up, I think it was number 8 green or number 7 green. But we're walking up and we're right behind there. And one of the guys I wanted to see really badly was Joel Damon, who was actually the leader after day 1. His game kind of fell apart in the next couple of days. But we're sitting there and I'm like, again, because when you're there, you are literally only 6-7 feet in rough before the fringe. And then it's the green. And I'm sitting there. I got a good spot because it was the backside of the green next up to number 8 tee box, which is a par 5. So you could see the par 4 come in and you could run over and watch the guys teeing off there. And I got up there and someone was putting on the green. I ran over and found a spot, and it was just Joel Damon, who's like 10 feet away from you. And, he putted it, like a foot out or something. And it was just really cool to be that close. And the list of guys that I wanted to see, I'm pretty sure we hit everyone. Like we saw Brian Harmon, who's a little bit lower on the list, but wanted to see him. We saw Joel Damon. But then like the big ones, Tony Finau, watching him swing a driver in real life with his half swing is just insane, because he is a huge dude. Like you see him in person, you're like, you might be a small forward in the NBA.
It's like you hear how tall some of these guys are, and for golfers, like sometimes you don't even think about it. Like you don't even care because you just see him on the screen for the most part, unless you go to an event. And there was one, I think it was Stuart Sink came into the green, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's huge. I didn't realize how big he was.
Yeah, Stuart Sink's because he's old. I mean, Stuart Sink's in his 50s, so at his, that's the only way he can, for sure. But like the only way he can still play on the tour at a high level, and he won at the RBC last year in Hilton Head. The only reason he can still do it is because he is a big dude. So his swing speed's not great, and that was the other thing too, is it works both ways, because when you see Rory in person, you're like, wow, Rory McIlroy's small. Like I've always heard, Rory McIlroy.
He's like my height.
Yeah, like I've always heard Rory McIlroy is like a shorter dude, but then you see him in person, you're like, no, he's really small. And his swing is this violent, full go driver swing.
He's a strong guy.
Oh,
he double cheeks both swings, man. I mean, Jesus.
But he also is like the second or first longest hitter on tour. He's at least in the top 3. And then Tony Finau at 6'5" does these little 3/4 half swings with his driver, and it goes just as far. And golf is just so weird that way. And then the last guy we saw was the guy who won. I think it was the last guy we really saw tee off there on 3, which was Max Homa.
Yes, me. I ended up staying to see Jason Day tee off. But
that's true. That's true. But that was awesome. Seeing Max, followed him up from the tee box there on the par 3 all the way up to the green.
Yeah.
Kaiko kept chirping at him. He's like, "Hey, cut day was yesterday. You're not supposed to be here, Max." Max never makes.
And he goes out and wins the thing.
And he goes out and wins. Max is, and he's even before all the Pardon My Take stuff. I followed him on Twitter and really just loved the dude. I thought he was hilarious. And last year, the first time I ever bet on golf was at Riviera when he won. I had him as a long shot to win. He wins. And so immediately you're going to love that dude forever. All of a sudden a $5 bet nets you a couple $100 and you're a fan for life. And it was cool to be that close with Max and some of those other guys just right there and personal. And then, which we didn't realize, they were doing a shotgun start. So Rory actually started the day at 10. And then as we were getting ready to kind of start to leave, we saw Rory teeing off at at number 1. For the start of his back half, and seeing Rory swing on a hole again, couldn't see it. I might have let out a Rory yell. That might have been the one time I did the whole time, but that was cool. The whole thing was a ton of fun. And then we went back and I got after a little bit more, and yeah, the rest of the night was a little hazy. But the day itself was awesome.
Like a good IPA.
like a good IPA. It was a little hazy. But I'm excited because the next event, there'll definitely be less drinking in the morning, because it was an all day affair.
No
promises.
We
also did the dumb thing where we, because it was cold and we didn't know how. And as it turns out, there are places you could get beer like within a couple 100 yards of each other. And I thought it was based on the map, it was going to be a lot more spread out than that. So every time we went, I made sure I had a second beer because, sometimes you want to just double up and it makes it easier. Didn't know how far we were going to walk. Definitely won't be doing that next time. The next time we'll just keep it one at a time, because eventually you'll go up another 2 holes, and there'll be more places for you to buy beer, which I guess in hindsight probably could have been preventable. But and the other thing too is the weather was just not great. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
But we made the most of it.
It was rare. Yeah, it was rare for mid-May.
Yeah.
Especially around here, but
then I look out right now and it's 70 degrees and sunny all day here, and you're like, naturally. Even Sunday, it was, at least it didn't rain on Sunday. If we had just had the no rain, I think it would have been better. Didn't wear anything waterproof, that was a planning fault on my end. But you know what? Still had an awesome time. The 4 of us made the most out of it. We lost Andrew, which I told you guys was going to happen. Just a complete disappearance. His phone died. But we still got him back. We walked up 18 too, which was cool. Just a lot of really awesome stuff. So I encourage everybody, when you get a chance to go to one, just walk around. It's a great environment. And it's typically, the property was beautiful. And to see all that in person was really special. The other big event that was on Saturday was the Kentucky Derby. Longest shot in the history, second longest shot, I think, in the history of the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah,
longest in 100 years, because I think the last one was 1913. I'll be honest, and this is probably not a super popular opinion, but I think the Kentucky Derby is the most overrated sporting event in all of sports.
Now, why?
I get that it's cool. I get that
because
it's a
of
one-off.
the spectacle.
It's a 2-minute race. And I get that other people, they make a day out of it, and you bet on every single race, and you get all dressed up and you drink the mint juleps and all this shit. It's horse racing. It's the most degenerate of degenerate things, except everyone tries to dress up all fancy and make themselves not feel like degenerates for betting on horses all day. And look, bet on what you would have bet on. I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but I don't know. Yeah. It's I can watch the clip on Twitter, and it's just as exciting watching it on Twitter. And the 2 minutes when it's the actual race and everyone's on TV, you're like, yeah, that's electric. I'm not going to argue with that. But all of that, I don't care about any of the other races. I'm not betting on horses. Betting on horses is I might as well just go, to a roulette table. Unless you're really, really into it and you follow it, I just don't see the appeal of it. I don't know. Maybe that's just old man yelling at clouds. I don't know. I don't get why the Kentucky Derby is as oh my God, this is this amazing thing. It just doesn't really make sense to me.
I, look, it's a spectacle. I don't pay attention to any horse racing, period, save for the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. That's it.
Yeah.
Those are the only 3 events of horse racing I'll ever watch. So I don't know. It's fun. I've always kind of wanted to do the thing at the Kentucky Derby and
Churchill Downs.
Go hang out and
I'll tell you what, if
dress up a little bit,
somebody said, "Hey Jeff, here's a free ticket to come stand in this, sit in the grandstands and do it once," yeah, I would do it. I would.
Once. It's a one-time thing. I don't need to go every year. That's just one of those like one-time sports bucket list things.
It's like, I don't know, like it's 6. I mean, think about it. The 3 in the pinnacle of that sport comes down to 6 minutes, right? The 2 minutes at the Kentucky Derby, the 2 minutes of the Preakness, and the 2 minutes of the Belmont. I'm pretty sure one of those is like a speed track, is like a shorter track. So like that one's probably only like a minute long. So
males should be super enthralled by this because that's most of the time that this
as they tend to be, Scott. Not with Roman Swipes, new sponsor. No, I'm just kidding. Unless Roman Swipes wants to sponsor this podcast, in which case, please, we would love that. I'll gladly do that. But no, the whole thing, I don't know. I get it, kind of. I think it's, and actually, I heard Rosillo say this the other day, and I wish I'd come up with it, but Cinco de Mayo, all these other holidays that pop up, it's just an excuse for people to drink during the day. That's all we're looking for, right? We're all looking for more.
Do it. Mow the lawn on a Saturday. That's my excuse. Like, what do you want?
But it makes us feel better, right? It makes you feel less of like, oh, we all just look for events that we can center drinking around. That's why every event has like a signature cocktail. It's why the mint julep exists, right? It's like, who's going to a bar, on a random day in October when college football's on and being like, hey, can I get a mint julep? Right. Or even if you're going to a nice dinner,
LSU game.
Yeah, maybe. But like, if you're going to a nice dinner or something, like, it's like, oh, give me a mint julep. That sounds, no, if you drink it at one place, you probably aren't going to like it because it's mint in a drink. With which, other than mojitos, I guess is like the other big thing that has mint. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old man. Maybe I'm just looking for things to bitch about. I don't know.
You sound a bit curmudgeon-y.
It's a little curmudgeonly. And also, we're just all this after we just talked about how awesome it was to go golfing and do the exact same thing, but just on a golf course, right? So at least there's humans doing skills. Horses running. That's the other thing too. It always just feels gross. It's like these horses, I don't know. I guess they have pretty great lives. They just become studs for the rest of their life. But I don't know.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
Last
I mean, the comeback was really cool. Like, just like in terms of the actual race itself this year, the 81 shot Rich Strike winning, the final mile and a quarter, which was record setting, was just unbelievable. If you have a chance, go find it on Twitter. There's a great shot from overhead that shows the comeback, and he's in the back third, and with
it's absurd.
Probably less than a mile to go, and just an absolute blitz of a run to get up to the front.
Well, I think the first quarter,
it was
like the first quarter mile, they said was like pace wise was the fastest first quarter mile that they've had like in years.
For the field, yeah.
Yeah, like that. It was just everyone got burnt out so fast. And then, Rich, what's it? Rich Strike. Is that his name? Rich Strike, Dick Strike. Jesus. Just like coming out of nowhere. I mean, it was electric, but that's a once every 100 a year thing. Literally once every 100 years, you get that. Right. And it's like, am I really going to make a big deal out of that for 2 minutes? I mean, it was amazing. That part of it was electric. I'm totally there for it. But like, I don't know, man. Just didn't really do it for me. Doesn't really do it for me. Last thing I want to stay here as we wrap up the pod. Longtime Philadelphia sports writer, radio personality, TV personality, and Pro Football Hall of Famer Ray Didinger announced he is retiring at the end of this month from all media. 75 years old. And when I talk to people about why I wanted to get into this industry, why I wanted to do what I did, or people whose opinions I respect, Ray Didinger is at the top of that list for pretty much every single one of them. The most sensible yet passionate, genuine, kind-hearted sports fan you'll ever meet in your life. The dude has covered the Eagles for 53 years. Is a Pro Football Hall of Famer in Canton. He votes on the Eagles Ring of Honor. The Eagles put out a statement, Jeffrey Lurie put out a statement acknowledging him. I mean, he is every single Philadelphia sports fan's favorite media personality. And he's a huge reason of why I got in this industry. And whenever, my mom will text me like, oh, what'd you think of this? Or what'd you think of that happens in sports? I'll text her back. And whenever she says like, oh, Diddy said the same thing, it's like this weird set of affirmation for me, right? Because I don't hear every single thing he does. But to me, like, his word is gold. And there is, I would say, like, 2 media personalities in the entire industry who I would say that about him. And even Ryan Russillo, I wouldn't even put in that same category, but I think he's up there when it comes to NBA stuff. And Diddy was, again, a huge reason for me, huge inspiration for me. And he's just the best. I mean, he's been on Eagles post-game live since its inception in 1997. He's been around the team. I mean, he's the best. Always so articulate, always so well thought out. And one of the all-time rants, this was the morning of the Super Bowl against the Patriots in 2017, 2018. They did a crossover with NBC Sports where it was Michael Barkan and Diddy from Philly, and then 2 guys from New England. And the New England guys were, calling Philly fans, oh, thug, and this undertone of violence. And this guy was a little bit younger, and Diddy was like, you want to talk about thug fans? He's like, why don't you go? I forget the name of the stadium. He's like, why don't we go back to the old stadium before New England fans won anything?
The Vet?
And talking about the one up in New England.
Oh, in New England. Oh,
yeah. And he was like, let's go up there. He's like, they were the worst fans in the NFL. He's like, and then what happened? The Patriots started winning, and all of a sudden you guys became nicer, and the guy's like, oh, this was 40 years ago, Ray. And Diddy goes, he's like, yeah, but you guys still talk about Santa Claus, and that was 60 years ago. And just completely gave it right back to him in such a fantastic way. And of course, in the way that this is what makes Diddy so great is he let his Philly passion jump out there for a second, and then immediately went back to the rational brain side of him where he was like, I like Boston. I think Boston's an amazing sports town. He's like, I think it's very similar to Philadelphia. He's like, but let's be honest. He's like, people in Boston, New England didn't even know there was a football team there until Tom Brady got there and they started winning. And it was just so well said. And so just shout out to Diddy, 75 years old, wants to watch his granddaughters, playing field hockey and stuff around Gwen and Mercy and doing some other great stuff there. So he will be missed, but an absolute gold standard and a legend in the industry. So happy retirements to you, sir. That's all I got. Anything else from you, Scotty?
Go Warriors.
Go Warriors. We will see tonight. Again, remember.
And Sixers for you.
And Sixers. Yeah. Scotty's got Milwaukee, Golden State, Philly, and Dallas over the next 2 days. I got Boston, Golden State, Philly, and Phoenix. So a couple of Philly, wink, wink, Miami, wink, wink, But I'm riding with the Sixers. I'm going to be right this time. We're turning it around. For Scotty, I'm Jeff. Great story from Vido coming on Friday's pod. Going to talk some NFL stuff as well as the schedule gets released. So stay tuned for that, and we'll get to you guys on then. Take it easy, everybody. Not so fast. We're not done with the pod yet. Just as we were wrapping up, Vido texted us and said, yo, boys, are you on? And so I did hint at this at the top of the pod that there was a chance this might happen. It is. We got Vido on here. So I teased, I basically told the audience and our listeners as much as you told us, which is that you went out with 3 Eagles rookies on Saturday night. Your boy Grant, Carson Strong, the undrafted free agent, and then Cam Jurgens, the second round center. And so honestly, dude, just ball in your court. Go ahead, let it rip, and tell us everything, every detail. I want the full play-by-play.
Yeah, man. So it worked out. I was coming back from Cleveland. The rookies finished up their mini camp and they got to kind of head out Sunday morning was kind of when they were leaving. So I texted Grant, was like, hey, I'm going to be back. And I wanted to at least show him the cheesesteak place that I love, Jim's, that's nearby here. And so he was like, yeah, coming through, going to grab, like, some of the other guys want to do something and don't have anyone else, they know in town kind of deal. And I was like, no problem. So they joined us up. We hit up Milk Boy, had a couple drinks, just got to know the guys a little bit. And they were asking a lot of questions about Philly, man. It was great. It was really, really fun. They had some cheesesteaks, and they went with provolone. That was my move. I'm not a whiz-wit guy. So anyway, so they like, I did definitely like those, but it was funny. One of them was just saying how, like, Cam was like, it's a little like there wasn't enough flavor to it. You could tell. He's probably, I said, you're going to love Permane Bros. You're definitely on the hoagie side of the Philly cheesesteak hoagie debate then. Anyway, but no, we hung out. And then after that, went out a little bit, but nothing too crazy. But it was really funny because we were talking, but you could tell they were just like kids that are now in Philadelphia. So Cam, he's from Nebraska and grew up there and like went there. And so a little different, being downtown in a city than especially in Philly, like one of the biggest cities in the country.
East Coast city. Yeah.
And Carson Strong, great dude out of Nevada. We were just talking football, man. Like we were honestly just talking about different players who they had played with. And they were more talking about like guys who are pro now and how their camp went. It sounds like all three of them had a really great rookie minicamp, which is the best part of it all. Like, I think that capped it off pretty strong there. Just being able to see them and see how much work they put in. And then it was funny because then afterwards I go back, read the reports yesterday and they all like coaches and everything said they did well in the scouts. So, or in the media, but on that night, then we went to Milk Boy, then we went out a little bit and I forgot because I'd hung out with Grant a few times down in Oklahoma, but I forgot what it was like to be with like a star, let alone now like an NFL player, because like walking around, it was funny. It was like, oh, well, we could go there, but there might be a line. And they were like, don't like, they're just kind of like, dude, we don't like, we'll just go tell them we'll like, and they weren't like that, but they were just like, it was funny. They're like, oh yeah, lines. You know what I mean? You could tell like, because at each of their campuses, right, they were like the big man on campus.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
like that's
sure.
every NFL player, and I'm sure it was
literally.
It was just one of those things where it was raining. It wasn't like they were assuming it. I don't want to say that, but it was like, oh yeah, like they were just kind of like also in college towns, not in a city where our lines are a little different. You know what I mean?
Well,
and
there are perks that come with being a professional athlete. One of them being, especially in a town like Philly, no Eagle. I would never expect Jake Elliott. Like you pick anyone. If you're on the Eagles, you're going to get a chance to just cut the line. And everyone in line will be like, no, please take my spot. Like that's it's not like they're being cocky or anything. It's definitely more just like, that's kind of the reality and why it's awesome being a pro athlete.
And that's what was so funny from my standpoint. But anyway, we went out, it was like misty and raining. So I was like, it's probably going to be dead out. We'll go to a bar that's just more like we can sit and talk. Of course we get in there and it's packed. And like, I think cause it was wet and rainy, everyone just flooded inside, but it was really fun to just like hang out with them, have a couple drinks. It was definitely a good time. And we were out, like we weren't out too late because they all had flights next morning. So it was kind of wasn't too crazy of a night or anything like that, but it was really fun just to like, I don't know, I guess be a fourth wheel on the like three rookies celebrating they got through rookie minicamp. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Helping them get to their new city, get acquainted with it.
Well, and that was at least fun too. Just being like, oh, I'll show you a couple spots here. Like walk by a blind barber was a good spot. Scotty knows it's went to a couple different spots, or at least showed them right as we were walking around. So that was fun, but definitely excited to see what those three do. And because I was looking, obviously Jurgens got drafted in the second round. Grant was in the sixth. Carson Strong was a free agent, but I looked at I couldn't believe it. He actually, I can believe it, but I guess what I'm saying is he got one of the biggest deals an undrafted rookie free agent ever had, or a signing bonus of $300K. Yeah. So, he was slinging it. He's a confident dude. Like just talking to him, he's like, yeah, like, he's like, there's obviously, like he was talking about the room. He's like, there's obviously Jalen Hurts, but like, he's like, we're all competing, man. Like we're all like, that's his attitude, right? It's like, he's one of the guys. So that's awesome to see in an undrafted rookie,
That QB confidence is legendary. I have a couple questions. I'm sure Scotty does too. Who, if any of the three of them, did anyone get recognized?
Yeah, Cam did.
See, okay. We said that at the top of the pod. I said, if anyone, because his videos have gone like viral. So I feel like somebody would have had to, but then also like Grant's was probably the biggest because Carson Strong's like 6'2", 6'3", right? And Grant's like 6'5". So Grant was walking around, but Scotty said this too. How funny was the dichotomy between the three of them and then Vido, who I said that you were probably somewhere from, you're not 5'6", probably 5'8". Is that right?
Yeah, 5'8", 5'8". Yeah. So definitely a very big height difference. So the best part is we're at dinner and when we're eating cheesesteaks, the waitress kind of recognized, well, Cam was wearing an Eagles like sweatshirt, like gear and a hat. And so she came over and said, "Oh, you guys players?" And they all said what they were. And then she looked at me, she's like, "Receiver?" And I was like, "Yep." And I was like, "Let's roll with that. Like, I'll be a receiver, whatever."
Long
then,
snapper.
Yeah, I'll take whatever I can get, man. I'm a little, as we were walking around, like, yeah, you can be Wes Welker in the slot. Why not? But then the next time they got recognized, it was so funny. They were going around and saying their positions. And it was, again, like I was sitting there and they came to me and they're like, not to be mean, but are you like a kicker? And I was just like, this is the most perfect thing. I was like, no. I told them.
I said they probably would have thought you were their agent or like,
something like that. If I would have worn a suit, I should have just worn a full suit and just to get that. But no, it was really fun, man. They're definitely, it was a reminder that even though these guys are big and these guys are, have looked like they're men since they were probably all 17, they're all like 22 to 23-year-old kids. And they were just like, it was so wild because we were like walking by someplace like, oh, that looks like kind of a college bar. And I was like, it was just trying to correlate what this was to their experience so far. And it was really fun to be a part of for sure. And I hope to have a couple more nights out with those boys. They were pretty fun.
Yeah. So the rookie contracts hit, and I know one of those guys you were out with was a second rounder. Who paid for drinks? Were you the gracious host? Or did you let the NFL guys get their wallets out when it came time to pay?
No, man, I covered cheesesteaks. I told them, you're in Philly. This is a Philly move. So I covered the cheesesteaks in the first spot.
Done. Good man.
And then at the next spot, I got, the people covered me, but it was no, I mean, at the end of the day, they're still kids and I'm glad they have it, but like, I'm sure that's a whole, I don't know, that's a whole nother level for them.
Oh yeah.
And I just figured too, like I would do this so Grant's a triplet, right? When I went out with Andrew after he graduated, every time I saw him, like, I'll cover their stuff. Like, it's just the fact that like I've been working for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, it was funny because afterwards Grant was like, I got your next one, like I'll get you back. Like, and I was like, no, dude, don't like, this is a cheesesteak for a friend, Yeah.
No, that's it's good of you. And it's also like, that little older brother kind of mentality.
Yeah, that was
with
totally
that too.
It, right? Like, no, I gotta take care of this. Yeah.
All right. Two other things I gotta ask about this. One, was there any talk about how just enormous of a human being Jordan Davis was after they just worked out them? Yeah.
Yes.
Like, give me the lowdown. Dude. Get me excited. Because my other question was going to be like, give me any details you have about how rookie mini camp with Nakobe Dean and all those guys. Like, just give me as much Eagles porn as you can right now.
Okay. So they were like, Nakobe Dean is so fast, right? But they were just saying like, it also was weird because because he was next to Jordan Davis because he went to college. So he's like, of all the guys there, he was one of the smaller guys actually. Right. And then you had Jordan Davis, who they said is the biggest, most athletic guy. They're just like, he's so athletic. Like they couldn't stop saying how athletic he was for his size. Like, it's just incredible. Like he moves so well and it doesn't make sense. And he's like so skilled. And they were just like, yeah, it's just because we were walking by and it was cool too. Cause like you said, I'm not on the taller side of the scale. And so walking around the bar with them, it was like, oh yeah, let's go over to that corner. And then we just like walked there.
Well, you never lost them probably.
No. And they were, but it was just so funny. Cause even as we were doing that, right. Like, let's go over there. And they're like, all right, Falcon, they like the Carson Strong, like called the play basically for Grant. And like, I think it was a stretch run play of like to the right. It was just so funny. But they were, no, they were talking about him and just how well he moved. And it was funny because the one comment was like, we're sitting around the table eating at this point. So, conversation dies down. And then at one point someone had mentioned like, Cam, you're going to have to like one-on-one block that guy in practice. It was just thrown out there and he was like, God, he's like, he's going to make us so good. Like that was the comment. Yeah. Like, it was so funny though. Yeah. They were all super impressed with him. They said a lot of the especially the drafted guys did really well. Some of those guys who signed, like you said, it was really good class for unsigned free agents. You called that since before the draft. So it's showing up now and you're seeing a lot of guys get brought in like more than usual and probably will stay around camp for a little while longer than usual.
That's awesome, man. Any talks about AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, any of that stuff come up?
We talked Jalen a little bit because Grant knew him and everything, but not much, honestly, mostly about I would just say like the AJ Brown thing was just like this is like, the room is sick. They're like, the pass catch, the skill on this team is really sick. So like they were all excited to get to regular camp. So like right now, right, it's just rookies and they're doing, they're learning a lot and a lot of mental side and they all were really, they put a lot of work not on the field in the last, like, since they've been drafted. And so you could tell it was kind of relieving that they got through that pretty well, but you can tell that now when they get back in about a week or so with the whole team, that's when I'm excited to hear about how they're doing, because that's a whole different level, right? Getting to play. They were doing more in walkthroughs, right, and getting the playbook down than playing. So like that'll be cool to see.
That's so cool, man. What a night.
Yeah.
What a night. We all had, I mean, like, I thought my Saturday was cool because as we talked about on the pod, I have Rory McIlroy's practice ball and tee from the
That's awesome
event, right? It was like Scotty and I are walking around seeing like Tony Finau and Rory and all these guys play, and you're just hanging out with the Philadelphia Eagles. So we all had a pretty good Saturday night.
Good weekend, it sounds like, man.
Awesome. All right. Well, now we can officially say the pod is over. I'm glad we squeezed this in. Thank you for hopping on last minute, Vido. Scotty, you're the best. And for real this time, take it easy, everybody.